Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentle lady from Colorado.
Gentlewoman from Colorado is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different result. That makes the supporters of this legislation, by definition, insane. Reckless spending in this town is what causes inflation. And we cannot continue to increase taxes on the American people and put a target on American energy production while spending a historic $370 billion on Green New Deal initiatives and expect to lower inflation and improve our economy. Remember that so-called bipartisan infrastructure bill? Yeah, we spent $200 billion on Green New Deal initiatives. I guess that was just a down payment on this never-ending theft of American tax dollars. You are sacrificing American families at the altar of climate change. Mr. Speaker, isn't it so? Joe Biden himself said inflation rate is at 0%. So what the heck are we doing here? Why are we passing this so-called Inflation Reduction Act if it's at 0%? Well, in fact, it's the Inflation Enhancement
Gentlewoman's
Act.
time has expired.
And it does the exact opposite of what Americans need right now. This is just another con game by the Democrats, calling something one thing and saying another.
Expired.
This is making the IRS, which
Gentlewoman's time
agents
has expired.
Than the Pentagon, the State Department,
gentlewoman is
the
no
FBI,
longer recognized. The gentleman from Missouri reserves the bell.
Mr. Speaker.
Robbery on Americans.
How much time do you need?
The gentlewoman is no longer recognized. Her time has expired. The gentleman from Missouri reserves.
I will yield an additional 30 seconds to the gentlelady from Colorado to finish her comments.
Gentlewoman is recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
This bill hires 87,000 new IRS agents, and they are armed, and the job description tells them that they need to be required to carry a firearm and expect to use deadly force if necessary. Excessive taxation is theft, and the chairman said that we are using the power of the federal government in this bill. You're darn right you're using the power of the federal government for armed robbery on the taxpayers. I can only see why that this was rushed through committee and put on the floor.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. Gentlewoman's time has expired. She is no longer recognized. The gentleman from Missouri reserves. The gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
Now, 10 years ago, I introduced legislation, the Grassley-Cruz legislation, designed to go after felons and fugitives and those with serious mental illness when they lie and try to illegally buy a gun, to prosecute them and put them in jail, to ensure that our databases are complete. You know, in Texas, we've seen far too many of these mass shootings, including the horrific crime in Sutherland Springs. I was there at that beautiful church the day after that shooting. In that instance, that mass murderer should have been in jail. But the Obama administration failed to report his felony conviction in the Air Force to the database. So when he went to purchase his firearm, the background check came up clean. Had Grassley-Cruz passed into law, it mandated the Department of Justice conduct an audit of federal crimes to make sure those convictions are in the database. Presumably that audit would have caught that felony conviction. Not only that, Grassley-Cruz also created a gun crime task force to prosecute felons who try to illegally buy firearms, which means that deranged mass murderer would have been in prison, incarcerated, instead of in that beautiful church murdering those innocent people. We had a vote on the Senate floor on Grassley-Cruz. It got a majority of senators voted for it. 52 senators voted for it. That was in the Harry Reid Democrat Senate, a majority Democrat Senate. Now, you might think, okay, a bipartisan majority, surely this passed. Well, no. Turns out Senate Democrats filibustered Grassley-Cruz. They demanded 60 votes. And my Democratic colleagues who are here today all voted for the filibuster to stop Grassley-Cruz from going into effect. Why was that deranged shooter not in jail? Because the approach of today's Senate Democrats is to try to go after the firearms of law-abiding citizens instead of targeting the violent criminals that are the real threat. Now, domestic violence is a horrific scourge. Far too many women, children, And even some men are victims of domestic violence. But yet, when it comes to firearms, yes, are used by violent criminals, but they are also used over and over and over again by victims of violent crimes to defend themselves. If any of us could pass a law to end domestic violence in America, we would happily and enthusiastically do so. I have, over the course of the past 2 decades, dealt with far too many families who have lost loved ones to violent crime, to homicide. It is horrific. It is evil. But disarming people in situations where they themselves are potentially at risk risks increasing the chances of violence. If you have an individual that may be a victim of domestic violence, preventing that individual from defending herself or himself is a uniquely bad idea. Chairman referenced that the states adopt laws to address these issues, and I think that is the right approach. Unsurprisingly, the people of the state of Texas make different decisions about how to handle these issues than perhaps the people of Connecticut or California or New York. That's how our constitutional system was meant to operate. And so, I wish we had a hearing focused on how to stop violent crime. I wish we had a hearing focused on the skyrocketing murder rates in this country that we're seeing right now. I wish we had a hearing focused on the skyrocketing carjacking rates that we're seeing in this country right now. I wish we had a hearing focused on the policies advocated by congressional Democrats of abolishing the police and defunding the police that caused the crime to skyrocket. I wish we had a hearing on Soros DAs that were elected with millions of dollars from Democratic donors who get into office and refuse to prosecute violent criminals, release violent criminals onto the street, and then allow those violent criminals to commit yet more murders. That would be a hearing with some urgency. That would be a hearing where we are seeing people being killed over and over and over again, but that hearing does not fit the political agenda of my Democratic colleagues. Thank you.
We're going to hear from Senator Wyden. There are rebuttals to what you just heard, but in the interest of time, I'm going to move to my colleague from Oregon, Senator Wyden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, let me just note that for years,
I'll tell you, I've been to the border. I've been to the Biden cages. For 4 years, Democrats went on and on and on. The corrupt corporate media went on and on and on about kids in cages. You couldn't turn on the evening news without hearing kids in cages. What they didn't tell you is Barack Obama built those cages, and today under Joe Biden, the cages are bigger and they're more full than they were before. Mr. President, every Democrat who stood up and lamented kids in cages in the House of Representatives, Representative Ocasio-Cortez has a famous photo of her grasping her head by the kids in cages. Well, I'm going to give a simple challenge for Representative Ocasio-Cortez and for every Democrat in this body. Go see the Biden cages with your own eyes. I've seen them, the Donna Tent facility with over 4,000 people, with little boys and little girls on top of each other. Just a couple of weeks ago when I was in the Rio Grande Valley, the rate of COVID positivity in the Biden cages was over 22%. And all the Democrats who talked about this, if they don't go, if they don't denounce the Biden cages, then they're telling you that they're hypocrites, that they didn't believe it when they said it, that they didn't care about it when they said it, that it was all politics. It wasn't about their kids. Why does Joe Biden refuse to go to the Rio Grande Valley? Because if he goes, the TV cameras will come with him. Why does Kamala Harris, who's supposed to be the border czar, she's supposed to be in charge of this, why won't she go to the Rio Grande Valley? Because if she went, the TV cameras would come and would show the Biden cages. And the Democrats are counting on the corrupt corporate media to suddenly say, nothing to see here. 15,000 Haitians under a bridge in Del Rio, nothing to see here. Anyone want to know what Joe Biden's favorite ice cream flavor is? That's the news. Never mind 1.2 million illegal immigrants. Never mind when I took 19 senators down to the border, we went out on the river and saw a man floating dead in the river who died trying to cross illegally. Never mind the South Texas farmers and ranchers, the moms who told me, I won't let my teenage kids go out on our ranch without being armed with a loaded firearm. Because there's so many human traffickers and narcotics traffickers that it's dangerous for them to go out on their own ranch. Never mind the South Texas farmers and ranchers who told me at round tables how tired they are of going out and finding dead bodies. You want to understand what's happening? Say there's no crisis? Come to Brooks County. I invite every Democrat here to Brooks County. Brooks County in South Texas, it's just north of the border. Brooks County, over and over and over again, they're dead bodies of illegal immigrants. The traffickers who are bringing them in, they're not nice guys. They're not humanitarians. They don't give a damn. That means if one of the illegal immigrants is a pregnant woman, is a young child, is elderly, is sick, they just abandon them. They leave them in the rough terrain, in the summer heat, and over again. The farmers and ranchers encounter dead bodies on their property where the traffickers have abandoned them. Mr. President, I ask you, is that humane? Is that compassionate, the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris policy that encourages, that puts people in harm's way and results in people dying? When we were down on the border, we saw a young girl who had been gang raped by the human traffickers who had brought her to America. The rate of sexual assault is staggering, particularly among the girls and young women. So much so that a significant percentage of young women, before they take the harrowing trip with the traffickers, will implant a birth control because they know the odds of their being sexually assaulted are so great. And I'll tell you, as I was doing the roundtables, one of the things I saw also